Hello, it's David. Welcome back to more acrylic painting. And last time we made this awesome painting. I really like mine. I hope yours came out great too. This week we're going to change and we're going to start working on canvas, on actual stretched canvas. And it's stretched like around these wooden stretcher bars. The main thing to remember when using this type of canvas is don't press too hard on it, because you can like stretch the canvas out and it can get, kind of wobbly here if you press too hard and you stretch it out too much. But if you do stretch it out too much, there is a way to fix it. You can take some hot water on the back with a sponge and kind of just rub some hot water on it. That'll stretch those or it'll contract those fibers again and make it stretch back into place. So get your canvas out. You probably want to use the easel this time. And I want you to get out some colors. I want some Ultramarine Blue, some Cerulean Blue, and some white. And we'll get started on our painting. Okay, we're ready to start painting. And from here on out, we're going to be doing a lot more imaginative paintings, making it up kind of as we go along. And so your paintings are going to start to look a lot different than mine. And that's totally okay. But to start with today, though, we're going to kind of, do all the same thing. And then halfway through the painting is when you get to just start making up whatever you want to paint. But the first thing we're going to put down is a blue sky. And if you go out on a sunny day and there's hardly a cloud in the sky, if you look at the sky, it's not all the same color. Usually farther up, if you look straight up, or if you take a picture of the sky, like farther up, it's going to be more of a regular blue, a nice true blue, than down near the horizon line. And the horizon line is the spot where the sky meets the ground. And down there, the blue is going to be a little more dulled out. It's going to be a little lighter or grayer, and it's going to look more like a baby blue. The reason for this is something called atmospheric perspective. And atmospheric perspective means that things that are closer to you are going to be more brighter colors and more in focus. And things that are farther away from you are going to be dulled out. The colors are going to be grayer, and they're not going to be as in focus. That's because the farther things are away from you, the more air you have to look through. And air has water molecules in it, and light gets distorted going through water. So the more water molecules the light goes through, the more it's distorted, and the more things will gray out or the colors will dull out near, the farther away from you. So basically, that all just boils down to when you paint a blue sky near the top of your canvas, make it really more of a true blue, and near the bottom of your canvas, it's going to be more of a dulled out blue. Not as true and more of a, baby blue color near the bottom. So to achieve this effect, you want to start by just putting down like some regular blue near the top. And I like to always go back and forth, left and right, when painting like this. It starts to get, a little more of a gradation by going like that. Try not to go, make it too wet, or you'll start splattering paint like when you get to the edges. So just try not to get your brush too wet when doing that. You might need a lot of paint for this, but that's okay. And usually what I do is I do a couple coats, I do it a couple times. Because usually you can see here, it gets a little streaky the first time. So I usually like to do it twice. But I started off on the top of the Ultramarine Blue. Now I'm moving into the Cerulean Blue. And the Cerulean Blue has more white in it. And the more white you have in your paint, the more opaque it'll make. Opaque means that you can't see through it. And so, and I don't like having the hairs from my brush on there. So if you get a little hairs, you can just pick them off with your fingers, or you can leave them on the canvas. It's not the end of the world. I just don't like them. So I usually pick them off if I can. You just keep going back and forth, left and right. Make a nice subtle gradation. And then start with a little more cerulean blue. But you don't have to go, you know, all the way down to the bottom. Because of course there's going to be a part where we're going to have ground. We're going to have the earth there. So you really only need to go maybe halfway or a little more than halfway. And then around here is where I like to start putting in some white. And I'll start with some white and just start mixing that in. And you see, like, if you keep going back and forth like this, left and right, I need a little more water on my brush there. You see, if you keep going like this, it's easier to get like a nice consistent gradation all the way across. But if you get some spots here that stick out a little bit, you know, like here, it's totally fine. Just kind of try and smooth those out by going back and forth. And we want that nice subtle gradation, and you really achieve that by just keep going back and forth and back and forth. It looks like I need a little more of my ultramarine blue for the top. But the first coat of this usually like is more transparent than you want. You know, it's really hard to get like this blue on your canvas to be opaque. Usually you have to do it a couple times, and that's what we're going to do today. Get a little more cerulean blue in there. And you know, I haven't washed my brush yet. I'm keeping all that paint on my brush right now. Alright, let's go back down here and smooth it out a little bit. I can get a little more of that ultramarine blue down here and help dull it out a little more. Just a little though. And you see I just keep going back and forth and back and forth, going from bottom to the top. You just want to make sure you don't have a lot of brush strokes in there. And if you go all the way from left to right, you know, up and down, you'll get rid of a lot of those brush strokes. But, like I said, it's still pretty transparent around this spot. And so I'm going to let it dry, and then we're going to do a second coat. So go ahead and let it dry, take like a 10-minute break, and come back and we'll put our second coat on here. Oh, and wash out your brush right now. You don't want to leave paint on your brush for 10 minutes. So wash it out, get all that color off of there. Okay, what we painted is dried. So basically what you want to do is just do another coat of it. Do the same thing and just put on a second coat. And that way it'll make it a little less transparent. It'll make it a little more opaque. Try not to use so much water this time. It's more of a note to myself. I used too much water last time. But yeah, try not to use too much water. You want to keep it pretty opaque like that. That's looking pretty good. I like that. I'll start putting in my cerulean somewhere around here. Just keep moving it back and forth. Need a little bit of water on there though. Just keep going back and forth and back and forth. More of that cerulean on there. There we go. And then we want to put some white and cerulean down here. So I'll put some of that in first. The cerulean blue, and then I'll go in with some white. And start working that up. Not too concerned about this spot here, because I know like what I'm going to paint next is going to go over that. So I'm not too concerned about it. So don't worry too much about the bottom. You know, worry more about the transition of your color. Like here, you know, worry about how well it smooths out and is opaque and moves up the canvas into this nice ultramarine blue. So we have like a nice gradation going up. That's what we want. It looks pretty good. I just want to put a little more cerulean right around here. The cerulean helps to make it a little more opaque though too, because like I said before, it's got a little bit of white in it. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're probably going to put some clouds over a lot of it anyways. So, you know, when you're doing a sky like this, just think about, okay, are there clouds or not? If there are clouds, then you can have like little spots like here that are a little less opaque or a little more transparent or somewhere around here. You just put a cloud on top of that so you don't have to worry about that. But we do have to let this dry again. So let's let this dry and then we'll come back and put the ground in. Okay, now that this is dried with our second coat, we can start putting in the ground. And what I want to do this week is I want to put in some mountains. And so there's going to be mountains that are off in the distance, and then there's going to be mountains that are going to be closer to you. And to get the mountains in the distance, we want those to be less in focus and more grayed out. So for those in the back, in the back mountains, we're going to use a gray. We're going to use a little bit of black and some white. And then we're going to mix those together, just a little bit of black, mix that into our white. We want to get a nice gray. Might need a little water on the brush. But start off with just a little bit to start with. You can always add more black. And the idea here by doing it this way too is that we'll start off by adding just a little bit of black, make this gray, and then when we move closer to us on the painting, we can add more black and make it darker. But you can see here I'm mixing it up. I'm got close to that. I need a little more black though, I think. Let's get a little more black out. A little more of that out and mix that up. We want kind of like a middle gray. That looks pretty good. Somewhere around there. All right. So now that I've got that mixed up, I'm going to get a little bit of water on the brush. I still have a lot of paint on my brush, so I'm just going to leave it right now. And we're going to come in and just kind of make up the mountain line however you want. But, you know, just kind of start and kind of let your brush kind of just meander and just kind of move around a little bit. It's meandering and, you know, just try and get like the edge to be a nice sharp edge. And you don't have to paint in the mountains all the way to the bottom because we're going to, you know, we're going to put another mountain range in front of it. And make sure you got a good amount of water on the brush though. And take it and then kind of start in with another mountain somewhere about here. They don't have to be perfect either, but just kind of let it, you know, you just kind of go wherever you feel like it. Let it meander, like I said. It helps though to have a good amount of water on the brush with this, because then you can go with like one good stroke like that, you see? If you don't, like, then you got to come back over some spots like this. And then, you know, down here just kind of paint it in a little bit. Don't have to go all the way down because, like I said, we're going to put other mountains in front of it. And then we'll put in a third mountain over here, but it won't be as tall, I think. Maybe it'll just go to about there. Need more water on the brush. Like if you get to this point here where you see like it doesn't come out perfectly the first stroke, get more water on your brush, because you should be able to do it like in one stroke to get that good line there. There we go. But like, you know, if you have to go back and redo it, it's not a big deal. So kind of smooth out these spots a bit. Get it going down there. And we're going to have to let this dry again, but because we already had like 2 coats behind it, we're not going to have to do a second coat of this. We can just leave it the way it is. So, to leave it the way it is though, I also want to establish a light source. And the light source, of course, is going to be the sun. So, I want you to just pick out what side the sun is on. Let's see, do you want the sun on this side of the canvas or on this side? Let's see. While I'm thinking about it, I need a little more white. So go ahead and squirt out some white and make sure that nothing really touches that white. And then, instead of using that same big brush that I was just using, this one here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab the smaller flat brush. This one here. I'll grab the smaller flat, and I'm going to choose the light on this side of the canvas. So the side that you decide what the canvas is on, or the sun is on, sun is over here. Get a little bit of white on your brush, and then go back in while it's still wet, while this is still wet, and just kind of put a little bit of white on the right side or left side, depending on which side you pick, and kind of put in some white. But just kind of make sure it kind of smooths out a little bit. Just kind of go back and kind of gently smooth it out. You just want a little bit of more white on the one side than the other. That'll establish our light source. Kind of let it smooth, just kind of smooth it out. And it doesn't have to be drastic. You see, just a little bit kind of goes a long way. Kind of pick out, you know, where the middle of the mountain would be, you know, somewhere around here, and stop with the white somewhere around there. And if you have a little, you know, little spots where it's a little brighter than the other, that's okay too, because you can come in like this with your brush and you just kind of put in a few little spots here and there, and that'll be like some shadows maybe. You'd be like, oh, there's like a plateau there. Ooh, right here, maybe there's a cave that goes into it or something. I don't know. Just kind of make it up. There we go. And just kind of throw in a little brighter spots here and there. And then we want to do it on the other 2 mountains as well. Just kind of go back in and kind of just smooth in some white with that gray. As long as the paint is still wet on your canvas, you can do it pretty easily. And just kind of gently smooth it out a little bit here and there. You know, don't go all the way. And if you have a few streaks here and there, that's totally fine on a mountain like this, because, you know, like I said, maybe there's a cave there or the rocks stick out there quite a bit. You know, you could go in like somewhere like here and just put in some really bright white in just a few little spots like this and be like, ooh, that's where the sun really glistens off the snow on the mountain or something. You know, something like that. It's totally fine to have some streaky bits in here and there. But you don't have to have them either. You do want to establish like which side the light is on though. Which side is the sun on, and just get in some, you know, light source on your mountains over here. And just keep going back to that pure white though. Don't dip it back into the gray if you don't have to. And like I said, it's okay to have a few streaky bits here and there. The main thing you want to avoid is something like this where you can kind of see the canvas. You want to go back in and smooth that out just a little bit. You don't want to see little dots of canvas sticking out in your painting. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it just doesn't look as good from a distance, you know? And you see I'm going in with some brighter white, like right there. And you could go up to the tops too with maybe some of that brighter white that isn't so smoothed out. You can just hit it with a little brush stroke like that and then just leave it. There we go. That looks pretty good. But now we've got to let that dry. And before you do that, you could find a few spots, like maybe the light comes in a little bit over here too. Like maybe this is like a fourth mountain or something. I just kind of randomly picked that out. Like, yeah, well, maybe there's another mountain like right here. Gives it a little more depth to it. But I might paint over all of that anyways. You know, I'm not really sure where my other mountains are going to go yet. But I don't have to think about it yet. I got to let this dry first. So go ahead and let this dry, and then we'll come back after that's dry. So give it another 10 minutes or so. A lot of the painting today, and a lot of acrylic paintings go this way, where you work on something, you let it dry so you can paint on top of it. You work on something else, you let it dry so you can paint on top of it. Work on the next layer, and you just keep working in layers on acrylic paintings. That's one of the best ways to do this type of painting. So yeah, let it dry, and we'll come back in a little bit. So now that this is dried, I want to work in like another range of mountains. I'm going to put in like 2 or 3 ranges of mountains. I think 3 maybe would be good. So I got like a good amount of black here and some white. This time I'm going to take the white, move it into the black. So I want more of a darker gray. Which it looks pretty good here. That looks a bit darker. Might have to add a little more black, but I think that's probably good. But one thing I do want to add this time, though, to make it start to look a little brighter, is to put in some Ultramarine Blue. Just a little bit. It's going to start to look more like stone or rock. Just give it a little more life. Because gray tends to dull out quite a bit, and you know, you want to have it be a little more lively. And just a little bit of blue is going to give a little bit of more life and color to your gray. Make it look a little more like stone or whatever. That looks pretty good. Alright, so let's put in the next range of mountains. This ones are going to be a little closer. We're going to go kind of like here to about there. Looks pretty good. Yeah, it should be a little darker though. I can tell right away going onto the canvas it should be just a little darker, but I'm going to leave it. We're going to let it go. Bring this down here. And you're not really going to see the ground too much in this painting. Just the way that, you know, it's going to go for this one. This one is more just looking up at the mountains from pretty far below. So you're not going to see the ground. But whenever you're doing a painting or a drawing, it's important to think about your perspective of where you're looking at something from. Like, are you way below it? Are you way above it? How does that affect the painting and how you're looking at things? Because you can't fit everything into a painting. I'm going to have this one go up about here and stop. Need a little more water on the brush. Get that moving. You want to make sure that paint moves, and you know, like you can see in some spots I get a better line than others. You want to make sure to get that nice crisp harsh line. You know, don't have it be too soft and have it show what's underneath. You want to make sure it's got a good crisp line. And that means keeping your brush wet. So keep dipping it into the water. Just don't have it be dripping. That's the main thing. And have a nice point on this one here. And come over here, and then I think the next range will come up over here and kind of go there. Of course, like if you have like a spot you really like in the background, don't paint over it. But you want to, have a little bit of depth to your painting, and this will give it a good amount of depth to it. There we go. And then, when you're painting in the second range, make sure to go a little lower with it, just to make sure that when you paint in the last bit of mountains, you're able to get it in there and not have any white showing behind it or next to it. So make sure you paint pretty good ways down the painting this time. You want to have just a little bit near the bottom showing maybe, but you could even take this layer and go all the way to the bottom if you want to with it, if you have like enough extra paint, which I want to make sure I have enough paint to finish the mountain range first before I do that. We have a little mountain here, and then maybe it goes up right off of the edge here. Doesn't really matter like where you put it, as long as you like it. Find a way to get it some way that you like it, and then just leave it. Sometimes when you're painting, you have to like just have confidence that you're going to do it right, and just get your brush wet and just paint it and let it be. With the idea that if you don't like it, you can just let it dry and paint over it. That is the beauty of painting in acrylics. If you don't like it, just let it dry and paint over it. So I do have a good amount of paint left though, so I'm going to finish off as much as I can down below it. I won't need to do a second coat. It looks pretty good. And I'll just finish off, some of this a bit, which will make the next layer more opaque even. But I'm pretty much out of that gray paint now, so I'm going to leave it about here, but that looks pretty good. I won't need to do too much more. I can always get the rest of it later. Alright, now I want to take my smaller brush, and we're going to put in some light and shadow on this one too. You just don't want it to be as bright as this spot right here. But if it is, it's not the end of the world. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this white and I'm going to mix it into like this bluish gray spot, so that, I'm trying to get kind of a gray that's close to that, maybe just a little bit lighter. You can grab, some of the color from these other ones and just mix it in. It's looking pretty good. That's about what I want there. Just like a bluish gray. And then we'll come in and we'll put some light and shadow on it on this side of the mountain. And sometimes, like if you want it to really drift off well, you can always take another brush, like one of your bigger brushes, and kind of do the dry brush technique with it. But I've found like with mountains like this, like sometimes it's better just to do it once and just leave it. And then you can always hit it with just a little bit of that white, bright white here and there, just to give it a little bit of character, a little bit more depth to it. And then I'll kind of smooth some of this out to have it kind of blend in a little bit. There we go. But you can put some streaky bits like on the other side too, and it'll be fine. Let's get some more of this color over here on this. And I like to kind of just go a little bit back and forth with it. Maybe put in a little streak on this side. Maybe there's a little light that's shining around it. And you can put a little bit here and there. Maybe I'll put like another one, kind of like a lighter spot like right here. So it implies like there's another little hill or a mountain behind it here. and then just kind of smooth that off like that. Let's grab some more and hit this side a little bit. Might need a little more water on the brush. If it's not moving freely, if the paint isn't moving freely, it means you don't have enough water on your brush. You need to go and get some more water. This looks pretty good. Might want, like, it's not standing out as much as I'd like. So I'm just going to take like the side of my brush and kind of paint a little bit of that bright white right on the edge, just to make it stand out a little more. I want it to be distinct between my mountain ranges. This is one way you can do it. The other way I could do it is make this spot on the mountains behind it a little darker, and I still might do that in some spots here. But that looks pretty good. We want to have a little bit more lightness over here, so I can put some brighter white in like right there. If you get some spots where the paint is a little thick and chunky, that's okay as long as you like it. If you like it, just leave it. It's okay to have some bits where the paint kind of is a little thick and stands out of the canvas. That's okay as long as you like what you've done with it. I think this mountain's got to go in front here, like that. And then this other one's got to come back a little bit more like this. And some of it is the direction of your brush strokes too. Like if I take this here and I go one way with it, and then I go back the other way going a different direction, you know, that'll kind of get that idea that these things are two distinct hills or mountains. You can always smooth it out a little bit, but you can always take like your dry brush though. I'd maybe use a bigger brush than this, but I'm just using this because this is the only one I have dry. But you can always take your dry brush and kind of just smooth it out a little bit with your dry brush. But we've done this enough times. You guys should be pros at the dry brush technique. All right, and we need just a little bit more white over here. I think this comes down in front of that mountain. And then I want some gray over here. As long as that paint underneath is still wet, you should be able to do this pretty easily. And kind of smooth it out. And then we'll maybe do a direction going this way just to get like another mountain range as distinct as that. There we go. And some of these bits, like, you know, here I'm down here, I'm doing this. That's not going to matter. I'm going to paint more mountains in front of it. So that doesn't matter too much. Now, again, we need to let this dry. And like I said, every time you do an acrylic painting like this, a lot of it is just, okay, put this down, let it dry. Okay, now put that down, let it dry. So we got about 5 to 10 minutes to let this dry, and then we'll come back and we'll do the last mountain range, and then I'll show you like how to finish it off from there. Okay, so our next range is done. I squirted out just a little bit of black, and I'm mostly going to use black, but I am going to add just a touch of white to it, maybe about that much. I don't want it to be straight black. I want it to be just a little bit lighter than that. There we go, somewhere about there. It looks good. And let's paint in our last mountain range. And when I get down to the bottom of a canvas, sometimes I'll put it up on the lip there so I can get right down to the bottom. Other than that, though, you can always hold it and stuff. Sometimes I do that to get it out there right. But yeah, let's get some water on our brush. Let's paint in our last mountain range. I have one that kind of comes from over here. And I might have gotten it a little too light, but I think it'll be fine. It'll look good still. Got our last mountain range in. And if your paint is a little streaky, that's okay. Well, let's have it come up about here. And I don't want that so pointy. You can always flatten it out and change it a little bit. There we go. Where's the last? What should we put in for the rest of it? I don't know. We could go with, you can always go with something like this where you have a little one to begin with and then have it go kind of big after that. Maybe it goes all the way up there. But you see here, like, it's not right. I didn't have enough water on my brush or enough paint on it. So you always got to go back and redo that. Make sure you keep getting water on the brush so you can get those nice crisp lines. And the more you're able to do that, the less you're going to have to go back and repaint things. So let's get that in here right at the bottom. One last mountain right about like that. Maybe this one has more of a plateau at the top or something. I don't know. Like I said, you kind of make it up the way you want it. And there we go. Something more like that. Like I said, maybe it's got a little bit of a plateau or a spot on the top where it's not as pointy. It's your world. You make it up however you want. There we go. That looks pretty good. I like it quite a bit. It came out pretty well. All right, now let's put in just a little bit of light source on it. Still got a little bit of this gray here, but you know, it's not enough. It'll probably be too light, so I probably want to take a little bit of this and mix it up in there too. We don't want it too light, but you also don't want it too dark. It's kind of a balancing act. Let's get this in here just a little bit. A little bit there, and then maybe just a little bit that comes off of this side here. And then we'll get some more over here. And kind of just go in a few spots. Like I said before, if there's some spots where it's a little streaky, usually that's okay. There we go. And kind of smooth it out just a little bit. Get a little more white over in there. There we go. I'm going to put just a little bit here because this mountain is in front of it and it's going to come out that way. Maybe a little bit though over there. And more on the light side. This one's going to come down over most of it. There we go. You can always just do like a few spots like here and there that kind of go across like that. You see how I did that? And let's finish off the last one with a little bit of light on the top and then go across there and then kind of smooth it out a little bit. There we go. You see I put in just a little bit of streaky bits near the bottom. It's a little too light there, but a few streaky bits here and there. Nature is seemingly random. So to make a painting about nature, it's better to just kind of let things go and just be like, okay, we'll put a few random bits here and there and it'll look more natural that way. Okay, so we have a nice mountain range here. The rest of the painting, you can paint it however you want and put in whatever you want on the rest of the painting. But I know exactly what I want on the rest of my painting, so I'm going to paint that in right now. And you can see. But anything you can imagine could go on the rest of the painting here. But, like I said, I know exactly what I want. Use my little detailed brush here. Get a little water on it. I'm going to use some red. Some crimson, actually. Use some crimson. I'm going to go up here And I'll start painting in what I want to paint. When you're doing something like this, though, you always got to keep going back and dipping your brush in the water again. It's so much easier to get it right the first time than to have to go back and do it again. And this spot will come out like here. Always go back and dip it in the water though. It's okay to put your hands on the canvas too, as long as you don't go into spots where the paint is wet. I do it all the time. Just don't stick your fingers into that wet paint. I think his head's got to be a little bigger. There we go. I think this wing has got to come out a little bit more like that. That would mean this one's got to be a little more like that on that end. There we go. And then, I don't know, maybe his body's got to be a little bigger around here too. Or maybe that's his tail. Not exactly sure. I'm just making this up as I go. And that's what I want you to do. Just kind of make up something and let it go. But as soon as I started painting in these mountains, I was like, oh, that'd be great to have a dragon in the mountains. Very cool. I like it quite a lot. And I think I'm going to put a second one in. Let's put in a second dragon. Let's put in another one like over here that's kind of flying around the other way. Maybe I'll make him this one smaller. Make the wings just a little different too. Change it up a little bit. Variety is what makes usually an interesting painting though. Don't do the same thing over and over again. And we gotta get that tail pointy. Let's bring the next wing out. And if you want to just paint the dragons like I did, go for it. That's totally cool. There's no way it's ever gonna be exactly like what I painted, so it's okay to copy things. The only time it's not okay is if you just take someone else's work and say it's yours. Otherwise, like if I say, okay, I'm going to paint a dragon, and you're like, oh, I want to paint a dragon too, that's totally fine. You're never going to paint it the same way I do, and I'd never paint it the same way you do. So that is totally fine. Even if we're looking at the same thing, you're not going to paint it the same way I do. Oh, I like that dragon even better than the first one. Let's put a little bit right there. Oh, that's a cool dragon. I like that one quite a bit. They're both pretty great though. You don't have to feel bad, Mr. Dragon. You're not bad. I just kind of like the other one a little better. But they're both good. Both good dragons. All right. Then just for funsies, I'm going to throw in a little bit of my transparent burnt sienna, just to put in a little bit of something onto my dragons. You know, you want to have a little bit of depth, a little bit of light and shadow, like I said before. So we're going to take some of that burnt sienna, kind of just put it near the bottom. And it's going to be really hard for you to see this, so I'm not really sure why I'm bothering, but we're still going to put it in anyways. do like it though. It does look good to me here, but all right, a little bit down there. And then I guess we could use a little bit of, let's see, I don't want to use white on my dragons. So anytime you use white, like it really kind of dulls things out. So I'm going to use just a little bit of yellow. Just a tiny, tiny little bit of yellow. I've barely squirted any out. I probably put way too much red on there, but just a tiny little bit of yellow would be nice. We'll put that like near the top, just to have like some light kind of shining off. And I could wait for this to dry if I wanted the yellow to really stand out, but I don't. I want it to kind of blend in a little bit, so I'm going to do it while the paint is still wet. I want just a little bit of yellow, like just a little bit here and there, and kind of blended it in, just to get a little bit more depth and color to it. And this one I'm going to put even less yellow in, just a few little bits here and there. And there we go. I got a couple dragons. Who knows if they're fighting or not. You could always put in some clouds. I'll do a quick little cloud just to kind of show you like how I would do it. But I don't like having a lot of clouds in my paintings. But what I would do is find a spot where I don't really like it so much. And I think that's probably about over here. And then I just kind of put down like some little bits of white. And you always kind of want to do this motion. You see like my wrist is kind of like twisting a little bit. You want to make some like rounded parts and let it be brighter and lighter in some spots and darker in other spots. I'm going to put this back down just for security's sake and put in a cloud like this, and make sure you always have some water on your brush. Put it in like there. That's not too bad. And then, unless there was light coming from underneath, which we know there's not, because this is the sun is up here. So you want to come in with some gray. I just dipped in a little bit of this extra gray that I had and put that near the bottom. And you see here how I'm kind of doing that, just kind of flicking motion. And then every once in a while I'll go up a little closer to the top and just put in a little spot here. What you want is, things to be a little bit random. So like I said, like nature appears to be kind of random. If you study any biology or science, like you start to realize like it's not exactly random. There's a little more patterns to it than you normally think, but when you're doing a painting, it's better just to make it look kind of random. There we go. And as long as it's darker near the bottom than it is at the top, you got a pretty good cloud. I like it. It came out pretty nice. I could put another one around here or something, but I'm going to leave it for now. I want you to finish up the painting the rest of the way. You could put some trees in near the bottom if you want. I'm not going to put any on today. You could put anything going on in the sky. You could have a little guy like climbing the mountain or whatever. It's up to you. The rest of the painting is up to you to do. I want you to decide how to finish it off. So until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.